On this episode of the show, I have with me Ken Ringdahl. He is CTO at Emburse, and we're going to be talking about, well, still enjoying the technical side. Even if you move into management and you still like engineering, there's ways to make it work, and we'll talk to Ken how he does that and how he spends some time on AI and keeps up with technology, and obviously he has time constraints as a CTO, so we'll dive into those questions. We'll also talk to him about pattern matching in his role and how does he work with those areas of technology that he might not have as much expertise in. Ken, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you, Amir.
Absolutely. All right, before we dive in, tell us what Emburse does.
Yeah, sure. We're a software company, fully SaaS. We help finance organizations around the world of all different sizes help manage their spend and give them insights and data. Things from expense management to AP and invoice solutions, payments, cards, even business travel management software, and everything in between.
Fantastic. Okay, so this episode we'll be talking about being an engineer at heart. We can call it that as the theme of the show. And you mentioned to me you still really do enjoy the technology side. Talk to us a little bit about kind of, obviously you're the CTO. We know you're not going to be hands-on the keys, but when you talk about enjoying the technical side and being the CTO, what does that mean? How much time do you get to spend with technology?
Yeah, I think it ebbs and flows. Certainly, at Emburse, I'm responsible for a large product portfolio, many different teams. We've got, more than 15 products, and even underneath those products are different add-ons and other teams and services. So it is a broad remit, but I do enjoy leaning in. I'm an engineer at heart. I started my career as a software developer. I spent probably about a dozen years, some of those sort of straddling the hands-on technical side and being a leader before I made the full switch. But it really is. I'd say first it comes down to understanding business priorities. Where are we focused? You have in a company like Emburse and many companies that have been around for a bit that have products that have been in the market that are probably generating the most revenue for you, and then you have new products that are up and comers. And sometimes you lean in on some of those up and comers more than the existing products because they're driving more growth. They may represent the future of your company. And so it really, I guess it's a big way of saying it depends. But I do lean in where I think I can be most valuable to the organization, where I can help everyone overall. And really, again, back to business priorities, where does the business need me most to focus?
Absolutely. I guess, I joke with people. I used to be within the engineering space. I haven't really written a line of code in longer than I can remember. But I do joke that if there was ever a time that I wanted to tinker and be hands-on, in air quotes, this is an interesting time with AI. I guess when you look at yourself and you're seeing all the tools come out to help people and assist in the code production space, do you get much chance, or do you get the inkling to want to quote unquote be hands on again?
I would love to. I mean, I wish I could also create 30 or 35 hours in a day. I really enjoy spending time with the engineers and the architects. And as much as I really enjoyed my days as a hands-on developer, and I do miss them. But I also feel like in my role, I get this balance of, I still get to roll my sleeves up a little bit with some of the more senior principal level architects and engineers, but I also really get to bridge that into the business side. And that's kind of what led me to, the CTO role and the different steps along the way as well. So, would I love to code? Absolutely. I miss it dearly. But I also really, really enjoy what I'm doing. So it's like, sort of deciding between two things you really, really like. I haven't written production code in quite a long time. I do still tinker on my own a little bit, but just a little.
Absolutely. I'm kind of curious, and whenever you do see people who move into the C-suite, they move up high into engineering orgs, they all say similar. I'm more removed from technology, I'm getting closer to the business, there's other business problems to solve. I guess as you were progressing, were you aware as you're moving up the ladder that eventually you would be giving up that technical side? I mean, being an engineer at heart, is that something you knew you were going to end up giving up, or is that just something you discover along the way?
I think it's a little bit of both. I certainly I had awareness to it, right? You can't, early in my career, I was with several different small early stage startups, and so you do get to do both at that point, right? I mean, I was my first VP role as VP of engineering. I was still writing some code at that point. It was a 40-person company. But certainly as you move up, larger, broader roles. I mean, my organization today is 250, 300 people. That is not a reality for me today. And so there is some awareness, but as much as I like to, I stay up with more technical trends and look at things that are maybe more, um, of course we have to talk about AI. Let's put that to the side for the moment. But when it comes to, just different trends of things that I can influence and microservices development and AI strategy and those types of things, that's where I tend to lean in more. I mean, I listen to tons of technical podcasts. I read, lots of industry news and try to stay up as much as I can. So it's not the direct coding part. It is still technical. And, my advice, especially when there's new managers, when someone is becoming a manager for the first time or still sort of in that first line manager role, I still encourage them as much as, and certainly my team will listen to this and say, hey, Ken, you're contradicting yourself, because I want managers very focused on the productivity of their team. But at the same time, I want those managers to stay as technical as possible, because I truly believe the best outcomes come from those engineering managers that are very, very technical, but they put the team first. And so, back to your question, yes, aware, but I think it shifts to, hey, what are the technical things I want to focus on? Coding is just a piece of it. And in fact, you can look at your senior engineers and principal level engineers, they code less and less. You take an entry level software developer, mid level software developer, they're writing code a large majority of the time. The more you move up to staff level engineers, they're coding less, and they also have to straddle the business, yet they are still coding.
Absolutely. This question does come up, and I'm curious, kind of from your perspective. You're obviously very good as an engineer. At one point, that's your job. The more you do something, the better you get at the craft. When you start moving into different layers and levels of leadership, you do have to pick up brand new skills that you might not have gone to school for, if you, let's say, did get a CS or technical degree, and you're interacting with the business in a way that you just hadn't seen. I guess as you kind of had gone up through the career ladder, and you started realizing, obviously, self-aware that you were going to leave coding and be more business focused in some ways. How do you prepare for that? Is that something where, can you prepare for it? Is it one of those where you just gain the skills as you're making the move, or is it an aptitude thing? How does one get ready for that?
It's a great question. When I think back to, I always thought, I got a computer science degree. So I had my technical degree, and certainly I could have gone to get a master's degree in computer science, computer engineering, what have you. I always thought if I went to get another degree, it probably would be an MBA or a business-like degree. But I really started learning on the job really fast. I was, and some of it is, sometimes you get lucky and opportunities find you, but you also create your own opportunities. And I'd say as that happened, I always tried to throw myself into different situations, and so to challenge myself. And opportunities found me because I made myself aware. I made myself known. I raised my hand for certain things, and I really learned on the job. So I probably 3, 4, 5 years into my career, I thought that would be the point at which I would maybe go get an MBA. But I did get elevated to a leadership role. I was working very cross-functionally. I was learning as much on the job as I think I could have. And I think back to, certainly if I went to business school, there's definitely things that I would have learned there. there's never a definitive path. I look at it and say, if I went for my MBA, would I have ended up at a CTO? I probably still would have ended there. It's just two different paths to the same outcome. And it's really the different things you pick up along the way. I never saw sort of the right opportunity to sort of step away. I was still learning and growing so fast. I'm like, I don't want to step away and spend a year and a half or 2 years going to school and then coming back again. But I also looked at it and said, I don't know that I could pull off an executive MBA at the same time. And so I just said, okay, this is my path. I'm going to go learn on the job. I'm going to sort of lean on people, and I think the people that certainly one of the best traits and skills I think that I've had is just attaching myself to so many people, and being very, I think really good engineers are very curious. I was always super curious and asking questions, not only of technology, because I always want to know, hey, how does that thing work? And my engineer brain works that way. But on the business side, hey, how does that work? And listening to business tech podcasts, the CFO, the head of sales, the CRO, like these are all people that I would just work closely with and build relationships with and get to know their world. Not that I want to take their jobs, but it helps me, build a bridge, and the two of us to build a bridge together. And so it was a lot of this on the job, and, not straight path, and just like seek opportunities and find those things that can ultimately just grow your career.
Absolutely. It's interesting, somebody once mentioned to me that you can tell somebody's level of expertise by the questions they ask. And I don't think I think leadership and asking questions if you're good at it, it's a superpower, because you can get to the heart of what you're looking to understand. When it comes to being good at asking those questions, especially when you're talking to people in areas of technology that you might have less focus in, might not be where you had potentially worked in, how do you start understanding and evaluating when you're asking those questions in those areas that you're, maybe a little bit newer in?
Yeah, certainly, since I stopped being a hands-on developer, certainly in a large capacity, the technology world has moved substantially. And even, as I was sort of winding down my hands-on coding days, cloud was really ramping very, very rapidly. I would, there's always training and LinkedIn learning and other things that you can do. But I've always, found one, if you can put your hands on something, you really get to know it well. But, I learn from other people, substantially. I learn from my own team. I have experts in so many different areas. As a CTO in a broad role, like, I can't go super deep, but I learn from everyone and ask those questions, and show up in different meetings, and sometimes be a fly on the wall. I think there's so many different ways to do it, and it's a combo of sort of doing some things hands on. Could be books, audio books, could be reading industry articles, and then it's learning from others. And I think the latter is probably the most effective. But you also want to be respectful of other people's time too. So, I try to do it in a very hands-off, casual way, to be honest.
Absolutely. When we're talking about AI, the expertise has shifted. Engineering's still involved with AI, depending on what we're doing with AI. I think it's such a big question. Depends what each org is doing with AI, whether we're talking and what we're doing with integrate into product, if it's more of a line of business thing. When it does come to AI, and it's come out of, well, some people say it hasn't come out of any field, it's been around for a while, but it's hit the mainstream and talking points a lot faster than most people would have realized in the last 3 or 4 years. When it comes to AI and getting your arms around that and being able to navigate the org as a CTO, I guess what's your approach to that? Is it, again, you mentioned lots of learning, Q&A, relying on experts, combination of all those, but and especially when it comes to establishing what that vision will look like as the leader of technology.
Yeah, I'll tell you one of the things I do, and maybe this sort of bridges us from the last question as well, is I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, and this came out thinking about people and leading large organizations. One of the things came out of an employee survey of hey, having sort of connecting with leaders, connecting with the CTO. One of the things I do is twice a quarter I have open office hours, and people will join, and it sort of acts as a little bit of an ask me anything type of environment, but I also use that one. I use that time to connect with people that I wouldn't normally be able to connect with. But I also use it to ask questions of other people as well. And this is, sort of they get to hey have an open discussion. They'll throw ideas off the wall. We'll sort of bounce things back and forth, and so it's just one way that I get to sort of touch base and connect directly with some of those people. And some of those people are sort of our AI developers, our AI engineers. So coming now, bringing this back to your original question about AI and how are we learning there? I think it's having subject matter experts on staff, leaning into that team. It's also leaning on our partners, right? So we have, we're partnered with AWS, we're partnered with Microsoft. I was on site in Seattle at AWS's headquarters like 2 months ago, and we had a full day EBC, and they brought in experts to talk about, hey, this is where AI is going, and so leveraging your partners, even leveraging your customers. Like I talk to customers almost every day. I want to know what they're thinking of AI. I'll let them know sort of where we are and what we're doing, but I use it as an opportunity, especially, we're like an 800 person organization. What are the 100,000 person organizations? How are they approaching AI? Because they're certainly going to approach it very, very differently than we do. And what is the 10 person or 20 person company? Because our customers run from 5 person companies to hundreds of thousands. And we certainly have to have an answer for all of them along the way. And so, customers, partners, employees, subject matter experts, all the above. And AI is evolving so rapidly. There's also industry experts. I mean, I was at an AI conference that our investors put on about a month and a half ago, and gave me access to heads of AI engineering. I won't say the names of the companies, but really, really well-known big tech companies. Got an opportunity to chat live, and in this particular case, I had some very specific questions about MCP, and how we should approach MCP, and I have some questions and concerns around specifically security with MCP and our internal use and maybe our potential product use of it. So, those are all just different ways, and I think to maybe bring this back, and tie with a couple of questions you've asked is, part of me doing my job and trying to do my job well is to be incredibly resourceful.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this question when it comes to maybe a side question regarding AI. When it comes to AI and your stakeholders, obviously you have leadership that you're integrated with, report to. You have other stakeholders that you're responsible to. When it comes to AI and communicating that business value without worrying about the technology, and the reason I'm asking is I am speaking to a lot of people where obviously this discussion around AI is much more in the business sphere, because other shifts of technology, it really wasn't, right? No one cared. Oh, please get us to the cloud center. Like we need to be on AWS. Can you make that happen? No one really asked that. It was just a technology solution that helped and blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to AI, people are asking, well, what about AI? And with that conversation, it doesn't always fit, but people hear about it. They've used ChatGPT at home, so they kind of see some of these things and the power of it. Has that altered, or has that come up at all for you? The stakeholders are bringing it up and asking for it by name?
They are. I think a lot of our stakeholders are asking for it by name, and they're looking, certainly my peers on the executive team are all leaning in. They all need to know it. They all need, many of them, all of them are customer facing and need to be educated on it. But they're also responsible for their business function and they need to be driving their teams. And certainly, I would say holistically at Emburse, how we're looking at um, at our software vendors, and I think many of our customers look at us the same way. Like they're looking for us to deliver more value. As we bring AI features and enhancements and integrations into our products, we're looking to get that out of our vendors as well. And if our vendors aren't making investments in their products, well, we're maybe going to look at another vendor that is innovating and is bringing AI that helps us do our jobs better and helps accelerate what we're doing. And so, the same way I think our customers are looking at us, and certainly, we're prepared to answer those questions. We're turning it around. We buy a lot of software and we buy a lot of technology as well, and we're asking the same thing of our vendors.
That's fantastic. As we've been kind of talking, we've been kind of talking about some of those challenges as a CTO, and I'm kind of curious because you probably, being an engineer at heart, you probably connect with engineers at an intimate level still. When you are looking at people that are trying to get into leadership from an individual contributor role, is there anything that in hindsight you wish you knew? Is there any advice that you'd be like, you know what, I wish somebody would have told me this about moving into leadership that you could share it with others?
That's a great question. I would say maybe the first thing, one, stay technical as long as you can. I mentioned that earlier, but I really do mean that because I think a lot of the things that I learned spending those dozen years plus, and there was a point early in my career, I moved up to management really, really fast, and I started to become less and less hands-on. And I hadn't quite, I wasn't even 30 years old yet. I hadn't quite sort of felt like I had the full foundation. I pivoted back. Some of that was purposely. Some of it was, a defined, an event, a company event that sort of forced that. And when I look back at that, coming back to the comment earlier about sometimes you're lucky, sometimes it's purposeful and you make good decisions. I would say that was a little bit of both, but I pivoted back to being hands-on for another 3, 4, 5 years. It was probably the best thing that I did in my career because now a lot of the decisions I make, I am matching experiences that I had as a hands-on engineer. Oh, that reminds me of this situation I had and how we sort of solved it, how we architected it, how we did this or that. Because now not being sort of in the Emburse code base and understanding things at a deep technical level, I still, as much as I can lean on my team's not always with me. I can't always have them, I can't always phone a friend. I have to be technically strong enough to lean on my expertise to make those decisions. So that's what I would say is, even if you want to be a leader, don't rush it. Like, don't go so fast that you don't get that foundation. As much as, everyone always wants to strive for that promotion and that next role, like, enjoy where you're at, soak up all the information you can. And, at least for me, that worked really, really well to make a very sort of graduated step through. And there were certainly big jumps at times, and going from small startup companies to larger companies. I've been acquired into big, like VMware and HP. I got acquired into a couple of really big companies. But just enjoy all those experiences and learn a ton, because you will use it all later. At some point, you will lean on all those experiences.
That's fantastic. I love that advice. I think that's I think a lot of people might be in a hurry to get to the next stage, and they always don't get to appreciate where they're at. So I think that's fantastic. I'm sure somebody will be like, I wish you would ask Ken this question, because I'm sure I've missed something. But if somebody does have a question, if they do want to reach out to you to ask you a follow-up, what's a good way of touching base with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely the best way to find me. It's just linkedin.com/Ken Ringdahl, just like my name. Feel free to sort of connect, ask questions. I like to post about Emburse and different things that we're doing. So yeah, feel free to check me out on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Ken, thank you for taking the time and sharing with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for the episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think we talked to Ken about what it really is like moving from being an engineer and all the way to the CTO role, being that engineer at heart, and how he stays connected and how he's had to kind of learn that business side along the way. And he had some great advice right until the end in terms of what you should be doing in your career if you are looking to move up, and connect with him. Ask him a follow-up question. I think he's the type of person I'd love to share his knowledge. And also, please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.